Welcome to today's episode on Talking the Game. We have a special guest joining us on today's episode, a fellow podcaster from the Oasis Chronicles podcast for a book interview with Ishan.
Hey Danny, thanks for having me on your podcast for today's episode. We have a limited amount of time, so shall we get started? So tell me, what exactly is the Ender's Game about?
Well, Ender's Game, written by Orson Scott Card, was published in 1985. Ender's Game is a slow-paced dystopian sci-fi novel that has a lot of good plot summary and character development. The book is about a little boy named Andrew Wiggins, also known as Ender. He is a third, which means that he is the third child of a family which wasn't very common in their society. It just so happens that he would become a prodigy to fend off monsters called buggers to save mankind from ultimately perishing. Ender would be taken to a space station by a colonel named Graf, where he would continue to train over 5 years straight without seeing his family the entire time. Throughout these 5 years, he continues to be placed in new intense psychological challenges. He makes his way up the ranks, even though he is younger than the expected age for these promotions, showing that he is much better than the other kids with him in the battle school. Eventually, Ender was transferred out of the battle school to a command school. Now he has to command a real army and save the world.
Very interesting. Sounds like a good book. Could you possibly go into more depth with the character development?
Ender starts off as a 6-year-old little boy and ends as a 13-year-old teen trying to save the world after having many various obstacles and demotivation. Valentine, Ender's sister, is a very empathetic person who doesn't want to do bad things, but since she is empathetic and weak-minded, she is able to be manipulated very easily by her older brother Peter and Colonel Graf. Peter, the main antagonist of the book, is a controlling and manipulative teen who wants to have all the power in the world and become its ruler. Colonel Graf is another manipulative person who constantly challenges Ender's mental state and puts him into difficult situations, trying to manipulate Ender into the best person to save mankind. Finally, Bonzo Madrid was Ender's old leader in the Salamander army that ended up being killed by Ender while fighting him in the bathroom at the space station.
Wow, seems like a lot of manipulative themes in this book. Moving on to the next question. Would you recommend this book to anyone? What did you enjoy about it? Who would this appeal to?
Well, I would recommend this book to anyone who likes slow-paced sci-fi novels without a ton of action, but has a lot of good plot summary and character development. I think it would appeal to older teens due to the maturity level and the mature themes seen in the book. I enjoyed seeing the different characters develop as the years went on and see how their points of views of the world and their environment around them change. I also enjoyed seeing how the characters' relationships with one another were built over time, like learning to trust one another.
Nice. I may even read it myself. If anything, what would you change about the book?
I think I would maybe add more action to make it appeal to different readers so it would be a quicker paced book. Me personally, I like more action-packed books, but this book was honestly really good and shows great character development. I would probably add some more action to the slower parts and the combat scenes to draw in the reader and make them use their imagination to see the fights and their minds.
Perfect. Last question for today's episode. Is there anything that the audience should know before reading this book?
Great question. There are a lot of manipulating themes that recur throughout the book, mainly targeting the minority group of characters since their minds are not fully developed yet and they can be easily controlled. There are also psychological themes, where the higher powers in the battle school place characters in new situations to test them and see if they have the capability to overcome the obstacles.
Well, that was all the questions I had for you today. Thanks again for having me as a guest on today's episode on Talking the Game.
Thank you for taking the time to come out and interview me and what I thought of the book. Make sure to check out the Oasis Chronicles podcast where I interview Ishan about Ready Player One. I'll see you guys in the next episode on Talking the Game. Thank you for listening.